Just gonna leave. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Amber Rose, also known as The Religious Hippie. You can basically follow me on any social media platform, or you can go straight to my website at thereligioushippie.com. On my website, I have economy rosaries, haters will be prayed for prayer journals, St. Jude prayer mugs, and all of those are available to you for a donation. If you guys can't donate, I highly appreciate likes, comments, and if you can, subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm. Thanks guys. So if you guys read the title, I don't know how I'm going to phrase the title because it's going to be a pretty long title, but it's basically things I wish I would have known before becoming a Catholic communicator. So without further ado, let's just get into that. Now I get a lot of questions all the time about what it's like being a Catholic communicator, being a Catholic influencer, being on social media, and if it's something that other people should pursue. I have a whole video about what it's actually like being a Catholic content creator, so I will post that in the description below for you. But this is basically some things I wish I would have known before I got a little bit deeper into this. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with my story, a little overview is that I was born and raised a cradle Catholic. I fell away from the church when I was 11 for about 8 years, and then I came back when I was 19, 2019, right before COVID hit. There was like this whole thing, really, really bad time for me to come back, but it's also like God's providence, so it all worked out in the end. Anyways, as I was making my way back into the faith, I realized that I could not really find any other young adult Catholic people who were talking about their experiences. All I really found were people talking about apologetics, which, again, not a bad thing, but I didn't find anyone really discussing their own story. And so that's something I really craved, and I felt really alone as I was going through this process of coming back into the church. So I decided to become that person for other people because I knew for a fact there had to have been other people out there who were just like me, who were struggling trying to find their place in the church and wasn't sure how to go about coming back. So that's how my whole journey started. And unfortunately, and I hate to admit it started off on TikTok. I don't want to talk about it. But last year I ended up getting permanently banned off of TikTok after I had 100,000 followers and there was like this whole thing. So I am no longer on TikTok, and no, I will not be getting back on TikTok. But that's basically where this all began. After I reverted, God dropped this ministry in my lap. I did not ask for it. I didn't know what I was doing. Something my fiance constantly likes reminding me is that God does not call the qualified. So now that we have that all figured out, or whatever. So that's a little backstory about me. If you guys want to know about the whole reversion process, like what made me revert, all of that, I will link my testimony in the description below. But anyways, getting into the gist of this video, the first thing I kind of want to talk about is being a people pleaser. I am a people pleaser. And so when I first got on social media, I really wasn't sure what I was getting into. I just started posting about my faith on TikTok. And let's be honest, TikTok is not the best place to post about your faith. Honestly, even Twitter isn't that great to post about your faith, which is now X, no longer Twitter, whatever. But I was not prepared for the amount of awful comments and threats that I was about to get. And I don't think anybody's really prepared for that, if I'm being honest. It really took me by surprise how cruel people could be on the internet. And they just hide behind their phones. These are anonymous accounts. There's no way to actually call them out. And, you know, if they decide they don't like you, they just block you. So it was really hard for me to kind of get a hold of handling negativity online. Due to all of this, I started having a lot of issues with my mental health and my spiritual health. As much as I was sharing my faith and I was growing deeper in my faith, I started becoming more resentful towards people and less charitable. I lost my patience a lot. And so being in social media, I didn't set any boundaries with myself, and it ended up causing a lot of issues as to how I viewed other people. Instead of viewing them as children of God, I viewed them as like a nuisance, something that was causing trouble. And no matter what I would say or what I would do, they would always nitpick everything. They would pick apart what I was saying. They'd pick apart my videos. They'd point out like flaws in my speech. They'd point out physical flaws, like my hair wasn't the right color, my teeth weren't straight. They literally picked me apart piece by piece. And that was awful for my mental health. So I really had to learn that no matter what I said, there would always be somebody who disagreed with me. And I want to remind everybody that what I say is not infallible. Okay, I am very much so human. I will make mistakes, but the issue with being online is that those mistakes were magnified. I am genuinely just trying to help people. I'm not trying to be the Pope. I'm not trying to be God. I am literally just sharing my own experiences, my own opinions, and nobody's going to agree with me 100%. But we're not meant to, you know, we're always going to disagree with somebody a little bit. I had to learn that it really doesn't matter what other people think of me as long as God is pleased with the work I am doing. However, because I am a people pleaser, I want people to like me. I have that craving to be accepted and liked by people. But I found out very fast on social media that not everyone will like me, and many people will actually hate me for what I do, and that would explain the death threats and the awful comments. I've even had some stalkers at some point. We don't want to talk about that. I always tried to make people happy unless it meant compromising my values. But eventually I realized that I could not make everybody happy, and it was exhausting trying to accommodate to everybody. So one day I struggled with this quite a lot. I went to confession, and the priest told me that I needed to read the Beatitudes because they hated Jesus Christ first, so we should expect to be hated as well. But what they didn't tell me is that I would also be hated by people who claim to be Catholic. I thought it was just gonna be from non-Catholics, anti-Catholics, but no. Even in our own ranks, we will find people who go against us. And I think that's something that I also really struggled with, was realizing that not everybody who said they were Catholic were actually Catholic. I highly suggest you guys read the Beatitudes. My favorite Beatitudes are in Matthew 5:10 through 12, and they state, "Blessed are those who suffer persecution in the cause of right. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and speak all manner of evil against you falsely because of me. Be glad and lighthearted, for a rich reward awaits you in heaven. So it is they who persecuted the prophets who went before you." So basically, I learned through trial and error that no matter what I did, there were always going to be people who went against what I said, would drag me through the mud, and there's nothing I could really do about that except to pray for them and not engage in the hate. I think that's something that we need to understand, is that if we engage, it's only going to feed the fire. The only way to snuff out a fire is to stop feeding it. And so that's what I've decided to do, and I've stopped responding to hate. I've stopped responding to people who drag me through the mud. I've just stopped because then they don't get any recognition for it. They don't get a fight, and you stop feeding the fire, and eventually it fizzles away. And I also want to say here that being a public figure, it's very important how you act and how you react online. I think we can think of so many celebrities who have ruined their reputation from things that they've engaged online with, whether it was a comment they left under a post or they retweeted something. Whatever it is, we really need to be diligent and careful about what we are responding to, because we don't want to risk ruining our image over something that is so minuscule in the big scheme of things. So make sure that you are checking yourself and taking breaks on social media so that you're not rashly engaging in certain social media posts and things of that nature. Another thing I had to learn is that I could not take care of others spiritually when I myself am spiritually weak. The best way I can explain this is, let's say you're on a plane and you know those airbags drop from the ceiling. They always tell you to help yourself first and then help those around you, because what good are you to other people if you can't breathe? I would be in the worst spiritual shape of my life, and I would still try to help others in their struggles. But I learned pretty fast that I could not help others if I myself were spiritually sick. I would constantly burn myself out trying to aid other people, and in return, my faith life suffered greatly because I would engulf myself in other people's issues. Now, whether this was or was not to get away from my own issues, I don't really remember, but I can say that that is probably something I would have done back then, because I wasn't sure how to face my own issues, and it was easier for me to take care of other people because I was an outsider. It was easy for me to help fix other people, but when it came to myself, it took a lot more work. I also had to realize that there were some issues I was not equipped to handle. I was asked by multiple followers if I could be their spiritual director, and my answer is no. I am not qualified. I'm honored that you think I am. However, I just do not have the spiritual guidance that somebody needs in a spiritual director. So I highly suggest either a sister or a priest to be your spiritual director. But we need to understand that there are some issues that we are not qualified to deal with. And when we're faced with those issues, instead of taking them on ourselves, we really do need to point those people towards professional help. Another thing I had to remember is that I am not responsible for people's salvation. If this is something that you guys struggle with, I highly suggest reading the book Soul of the Apostle. It's a fantastic book that talks about all of this, and I think it's important for everybody to read, but it's one of my personal favorite books right now. It basically talks about how our efforts are completely useless unless we have a personal interior life of prayer. We really need to meditate on the mysteries of our faith and preserve our spiritual life. I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the first point, but basically dealing with hate was something I really struggled with. And something I had to end up learning through trial and error was that people who are hurt end up hurting other people. And so when somebody would comment something mean or nasty or send me a very vulgar message, I would view them as a person who was suffering, who God put in my line of vision to pray for. And so if I had not seen that message, I never would have known that they existed. So because of that, I view it almost as an opportunity to bring these people to prayer and to offer them up to God. A lot of these comments can be anti-Catholic comments, and my main advice for that is just respond with kindness as best you can. Offer, links and resources like Catholic Answers, and really try to engage in a kind manner, because that's going to get you a lot farther than if you were to respond in a nasty way. It's also really important to have boundaries and remember to not throw your pearls to swine, because there are going to be conversations that are not worth your time, that are not fruitful. And you really need to discern that and figure out which ones are genuine and which ones are just trying to push your buttons. And then that way you realize, okay, this person actually wants to know about the faith. This person is just trying to prove a point. So just be aware of that, and just remember that some people aren't going to change their minds, and some people ask questions genuinely just to prove a point, and that's not really worth your time or your energy. Really try to focus on those who are interested about the faith and genuinely asking questions. I also talked about this a little bit in the first point, but it involves making mistakes. I am human. I am going to make mistakes. I am not infallible. I am, in fact, human. I'm going to make mistakes. When I first started this ministry, I learned a lot about my faith. And I learned a lot about my faith because people asked me questions about Catholicism. And I realized that through these questions, I didn't have an answer. And so that would lead to hours of research online, and I would watch videos and read books about it so that I could give a proper answer to these people. However, because I was such a newbie, if I did make a mistake, it would be just magnified, and everyone would point it out. There would be videos made about it, and everybody knows that if you make a post on the internet, it's there forever. Even if you delete it, people still have screenshots, there's still other videos. It's just crazy how deep the internet goes. Due to this, I started becoming fearful of making mistakes, and I started leaning further away from apologetics, and I actually became more of like a very vanilla person. I was afraid of saying anything that might be wrong, no matter how much I would research it, because of the hate I would get. Even if it was correct, if I got hate for it, my brain instantly viewed it negatively. So I would think like, oh, I can't say that, or oh, I can't talk about that or do that. But in reality, there's always going to be somebody who offers a negative comment. And so when I was going through this phase, I stopped talking about apologetics or things that might come off as controversial, and I really dumbed it down, and I really became more vanilla in what I talked about. So obviously that didn't last very long, because I'm a very bubbly, energetic person, and I have to talk about things that bother me or things that I'm passionate about. But I've learned to appreciate the criticism. Now, it doesn't always mean that that criticism is right, but I shouldn't be so afraid of getting criticism that I become fake because of it. And I think there's a lot of people online today that act fake in a certain way to avoid criticism. So veer away from the fakeness, be authentic, because people love authenticity. And the final thing I really want to bring up that I struggled with, and I wish I would have known, is to not lose sight of who this ministry was for and who gave me this ministry. I didn't ask to be a content creator. I didn't ask to be a Catholic communicator. These things were simply given to me by God, and I just continued rolling with it. Now, there have been some things where he's like, okay, that is not the way, through trial and error, and I found that God specifically wants certain things from my ministry and not other things. However, I was not prepared for the changes that would come with being a public figure. I wasn't prepared to be recognized randomly in random places and anything else that really comes with being a public figure. And I often used to lose sight of why I was doing the ministry, who gave me the ministry, and who the ministry was for. It's gotten better now, but it can still kind of creep in here and there. And I think that's something we constantly need to be aware of. I was really insecure when I was starting my ministry, and quickly I started noticing myself comparing myself to other content creators, even if they weren't Catholic. It didn't have to be Catholic content creators. Just in general, I felt like because I didn't have the latest iPhone or these lights or this camera or whatever, that my content wasn't good. I thought I had to have fake eyelashes, tons of makeup, hair extensions, cute clothing, all of these things. But none of that's really important to my ministry, to an extent. Not saying your work's not great, babe. Love you. I would constantly wonder why other content creators were getting all these views and shares and follows, and I was getting a lot of shares, views, and follows, but just not as much. So this comparison really started crippling my identity and why I was doing this ministry. I was getting wrapped up in the pride of everything about it's all about me, it's what I'm doing, what people like is me. But in reality, it's not me at all. It's God's ministry, and I'm just a tool in his hands, and he's just using me how he sees fit. However, I was able to overcome all of this negativity by going to spiritual direction and regulating my prayer life. That is so, so important. So now I have a better understanding of how God wants this ministry to be. And if he decides one day he wants to take it away, it's totally up to him. He gave it to me. The Lord taketh and he giveth away. This is not the Job quote. The Lord taketh and he giveth away. What on earth? But I just need to have faith, and I need to trust in him that he will always point me in the right direction, because he sees the big picture. He knows what is good for me, and I just have to lean on him. And I just have to be more faithful and trusting in his plan. And with all that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Those were things that I wish I would have known before becoming a Catholic communicator, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye! I can do whatever I want. This is my channel.